to make an abridged version of this passage, but I just can't. It's all so important. So we're going to read the whole thing, and it has a drama about it and a challenge that is in itself a sermon. Chapter 32 of the book of Exodus. When Moses didn't come back down the mountain right away, the people went to Aaron. Look, they said, make us a god to lead us, for this fellow Moses who brought us here from Egypt has disappeared. Something must have happened to him. Give me your golden earrings, Aaron replied. So they all did, men and women, boys and girls. And Aaron melted the gold, then molded and tooled it in the form of a calf. The people exclaimed, "O Israel, this is the God that brought you out of Egypt." When Aaron saw how happy the people were about it, he built an altar before the calf and announced, "Tomorrow there will be a feast to Jehovah." So they were up early the next morning and began offering burnt offerings and peace offerings to the calf idol. And afterwards they sat down to feast and drink at a wild party followed by sexual immorality. Then the Lord told Moses, "Go, quick, go on down. For your people that you brought from Egypt have defiled themselves and have quickly abandoned all my laws. They have molded themselves a calf and worshipped it and sacrificed to it and said, 'This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of Egypt.'" Then the Lord said, "I have seen what a stubborn, rebellious lot these people are. Now let me alone, and my anger shall blaze out against them and destroy them all. And I will make you, Moses, into a great nation instead of them." But Moses begged God not to do it. "Lord," he pleaded, "why is your anger so hot against your own people, whom you brought out from the land of Egypt with such great power and mighty miracles? Do you want the Egyptians to say God tricked them into coming to the mountains so that he could slay them, destroying them from off the face of the earth? Turn back from your fierce wrath. Turn away from this terrible evil you are planning against your people. Remember your promise to your servants, to Abraham and to Isaac and Israel. For you swore by your own self, 'I will multiply your posterity as the stars of heaven, and I will give them all of this land I have promised to your descendants, and they shall inherit it forever.' So the Lord changed his mind and spared them. Then Moses went down the mountain, holding in his hands the 10 Commandments written on both sides of 2 stone tablets. God himself had written the commandments on the tablets. When Joshua heard the noise below them, all of the people shouting, he exclaimed to Moses, "It sounds as if they are preparing for war." But Moses replied, "No, it's not a cry of victory or defeat, but singing." When they came near the camp, Moses saw the calf and the dancing, and in terrible anger he threw the tablets to the ground, and they lay broken at the foot of the mountain. He took the calf and melted it in the fire, and when the metal cooled, he ground it into powder and spread it upon the water and made the people drink it. Then he turned to Aaron. "What in the world did the people do to you?" he demanded, "to make you bring such a terrible sin upon them?" "Don't get so upset," Aaron replied. "You know these people and what a wicked bunch they are. They said to me, 'Make us a god to lead us, for something has happened to this fellow Moses who led us out of Egypt.' Well, I told them, 'Bring me your gold earrings.' So they brought them to me. And I threw them into the fire, and, well, this calf came out." When Moses saw that the people had been committing adultery at Aaron's encouragement and much to the amusement of their enemies, he stood at the camp entrance and shouted, "All of you who are on the Lord's side, come over here and join me." And all the Levites came. He told them, "Jehovah, the God of Israel, says, 'Get your swords and go back and forth from one end of the camp to the other and kill even your brothers, friends, and neighbors.' So they did. and about 3,000 men died that day. Then Moses told the Levites, "Today you have ordained yourselves for the service of the Lord, for you obeyed him, even though it meant killing your own sons and brothers. Now he will give you a great blessing." The next day Moses said to the people, "You have sinned a great sin. But I will return to the Lord on the mountain. Perhaps I will be able to obtain his forgiveness for you." So Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Oh, these people have sinned a great sin and have made themselves gods of gold. Yet now, if you will only forgive their sin, and if not, then blot me out of the book you have written." And the Lord replied to Moses, "Whoever has sinned against me will be blotted out of my book. And now go, lead the people to the place I told you about, and I assure you that my angel shall travel on ahead of you. However, when I come to visit these people, I will punish them for their sins." And the Lord sent a great plague upon the people because they worshipped Aaron's calf. The Lord said to Moses, "Lead these people you brought from Egypt to the land I promised Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For I said I will give this land to your descendants. I will send an angel before you to drive out the Canaanites, Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. It is a land flowing with milk and honey. But I will not travel among you. For you are a stubborn, unruly people, and I would be tempted to destroy you along the way." When the people heard these stern words, they went into mourning and stripped themselves of their jewelry and ornaments. For the Lord had told Moses to tell them, "You are an unruly, stubborn people. If I were there among you for even a moment, I would exterminate you. Remove your jewelry and ornaments until I decide what to do with you." So after that they wore no jewelry. Moses always erected the sacred tent, the tent for meeting with God, he called it, far outside the camp. And everyone who wanted to consult with Jehovah went out there. Whenever Moses went to the tabernacle, all the people would rise and stand in their tent doors, watching until he reached its entrance. And as he entered, the pillar of cloud would come down and stand at the door while the Lord spoke with Moses. Then all the people worshipped from their tent doors, bowing low to the pillar of cloud. And inside the tent the Lord spoke to Moses face to face, as a man speaks with his friend. And afterwards Moses would return to the camp, but the young man who assisted him, Joshua son of Nun, stayed behind in the tabernacle. Moses talked there with the Lord and said to him, "You have been telling me, take these people to the promised land, but you haven't told me whom you will send with me. You say you are my friend and that I have found favor before you. Please, if this is really so, guide me clearly along the way you want me to travel, so that I will understand you and walk acceptably before you. But don't forget that this nation is your people." And the Lord replied, "I myself will go with you and give you success." For Moses had said, "If you aren't going with us, don't let us move a step from this place. If you don't go with us, who will ever know that I and my people have found favor with you, and that we are different from any other people upon the face of the earth?" And the Lord had replied to Moses, "Yes, I will do what you have asked. For you have certainly found favor with me, and you are my friend." Then Moses asked to see God's glory. The Lord replied, "I will make my goodness pass before you, and I will announce to you the meaning of my name, Jehovah the Lord. I show kindness and mercy to anyone I want to, but you may not see the glory of my face, for man cannot see me and live. However, stand here on the rock beside me, and when my glory goes by, I will put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed. Then I will remove my hand, and you shall see my back, but not my face." The Lord told Moses, "Prepare 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will write upon them the same commands that were on the tablets you broke. Be ready in the morning to come up into Mount Sinai and present yourself to me on the top of the mountain. No one shall come with you, and no one must be anywhere on the mountain. Do not let the flocks or herds feed close to the mountain." So Moses took 2 tablets of stone like the first ones, and was up early and climbed Mount Sinai, as the Lord had told him to, taking the 2 stone tablets in his hands. Then the Lord descended in the form of a pillar of cloud and stood there before him and passed in front of him and announced the meaning of his name. "I am Jehovah, the gracious, the merciful and gracious God," he said, "slow to anger and rich in steadfast love and truth. I, Jehovah, show this steadfast love to many thousands by forgiving their sins. Or else I refuse to clear the guilty and require that a father's sins be punished in the sons and grandsons and even later generations." Moses fell down before the Lord and worshipped, and he said, "If it is true that I have found favor in your sight, O Lord, then please go with us to the promised land. Yes, it is an unruly, stubborn people, but pardon our iniquity and our sins and accept us as your own." The Lord replied, "All right. This is the contract I am going to make with you. I will do miracles such as have never been done before anywhere in all the earth, and all the people of Israel shall see the power of the Lord, the terrible power I will display through you. Your part of the agreement is to obey all my commandments. Then I will drive out from before you the Amorites, Canaanites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Be very, very careful never to compromise with the people there in the land where you are going. For if you do, you will soon be following their evil ways. Instead, you must break down their heathen altars, smash the obelisks they worship, and cut down their shameful idols. For you must worship no other gods but only Jehovah. For he is a God who claims absolute loyalty and exclusive devotion. No, do not make a peace treaty of any kind with the people living in the land, for they are spiritual prostitutes committing adultery against me by sacrificing to their gods. If you become friendly with them, and one of them invites you to go with him and worship his idol, you are apt to do it, and you would accept their daughters who worship other gods as wives for your sons, and then your sons would commit adultery against me by worshipping their wives' gods. You must have nothing to do with idols. Be sure to celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread for 7 days, just as I instructed you at the dates appointed each year in March. That was the month you left Egypt. Every firstborn male is mine, cattle, sheep, and goats. The firstborn colt of a donkey may be redeemed by giving a lamb in its place. If you decide not to redeem it, then its neck must be broken. But your sons must all be redeemed, and no one shall appear before me without a gift. Even during plowing and harvest times, work only 6 days and rest on the 7th. And you must remember to celebrate these 3 annual religious festivals: the Festival of Weeks, the Festival of the First Wheat, and the Harvest Festival. On each of these 3 occasions, all the men and boys of Israel shall appear before the Lord. No one will attack and conquer your land when you go up to appear before the Lord your God these 3 times each year. For I will drive out the nations from before you and enlarge your boundaries. You must not use leavened bread with your sacrifices to me, and none of the meat of the Passover lamb may be kept over until the following morning. And you must bring the best of the first of each year's crop to the tabernacle of the Lord your God. You must not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. And the Lord said to Moses, "Write down these laws that I have given you, for they represent the terms of my covenant with you and with Israel. Moses was up the mountain with God, with the Lord, for 40 days and 40 nights. And in all that time he neither ate nor drank. At the time God wrote out the covenant, the 10 Commandments, on the stone tablets. Moses didn't realize as he came back down the mountain with the tablets that his face glowed from being in the presence of God. Because of this radiance upon his face, Aaron and the people of Israel were afraid to come near him. But Moses called them over to him, and Aaron and the leaders of the congregation came and talked with him. Afterwards all the people came to him, and he gave them the commandments the Lord had given him on the mountain. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil over his face. But whenever he went into the tabernacle to speak with the Lord, he removed the veil until he came out again. Then he would pass on to the people whatever instructions God had given him, and the people would see his face aglow. Afterwards he would put the veil on again until he returned to speak with God. No man has ever seen God, but many people have wanted to. And there is an echo in each of our hearts of Philip's words, "Show us the Father, and we will be satisfied." It is felt to be one of the greatest handicaps to the Christian religion that we worship an invisible God. And people say, if only you could prove his existence, if only you could demonstrate him to our senses, we would believe. And human nature says seeing is believing, but it is not. If you see, you don't need to believe. It is because we find it much easier to take in knowledge through the eye than the ear that we would rather see God than hear God. But faith comes by hearing. And that is why God speaks to us in words rather than pictures. And faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. Faith is able to see the invisible. Faith is able to hold the intangible. One of the common temptations of human nature is to want an idol. Idolatry is almost the besetting sin of human religion. We want a God we can touch, a God we can see, a God we can point to, a God we can take other people to and say, there, look, that is the God who redeemed us. And we are reading in these chapters the story of how the people of God themselves didn't want to hear God, but did want to see him. Remember that just a few weeks before these events, God had spoken to them directly. It sounded like thunder up in the mountaintops. And they were so afraid, they said to Moses, "Moses, you go and talk to God. Don't let him talk to us. We don't like listening to God." But as soon as Moses went up the mountain, the people said to his brother Aaron, "Give us a God we can see." We don't want to listen to God. We want to see him. We want a God for the eyes, not a God for the ears. And this is the heart of idolatry. Now make no mistake about it, they were not thinking of turning to another God than Jehovah. They were not going to break the first commandment, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." They were going to break the second. And the second one was, don't make any graven images. Don't try and make the invisible God visible. You can't model God. You can't draw a picture and say that's what God is like. You can't produce a piece of sculpture in stone or wood and say that's what God's like. You can't do it. But they did it. And while Moses was up in the mountain talking about the tabernacle and the high priest's robes and all the beautiful things that were going to be made to help people to understand God, they were down on the plains making a visible God. Bear in mind that all this time Moses was up there, they neither had Moses nor the beautiful tabernacle which yet had to be built. It was still all in the mind. in God's mind and now in Moses' mind. And Moses could see all the things we've looked at during the last few Sunday mornings. The tabernacle, the high priest's robes. But there is one striking omission from the tabernacle. There is something that is not in the tabernacle that you would find in every other religious building of those days. And that is an idol. There is a house for God to be built. There is furniture for God. But there is no image of God in the tabernacle. None at all. And it's the one thing the people of Israel down on the plain were busy making while God was telling Moses what kind of a house and furniture he wanted. They were not thinking of a house and furniture or robes. They were thinking of an image. And so they got hold of Aaron. They pulled off all their earrings at his request. He says he put them in the fire and out came a calf. The Bible more truly says he molded it and he carved it and he produced a calf. Why a calf? Because that had been one of the commonest idols in ancient Egypt. It was a figure of a young bull signifying virility and also indicating that many of the ancient religions came under the heading of what we call fertility cults. But this calf was to represent God. They weren't calling it another God, they were going to call it Jehovah. And they were going to be able to point at it and say, this is the God that brought you out of Egypt. You can see him now. You don't need to believe in an invisible God. He is a visible one. There's another great advantage about having an idol. One is that you don't need faith anymore, you can see. And the other is that the idol is under your control, whereas God is not. Now let's just make that point a little more clearly. Prior to this, God appeared as a pillar of cloud and fire. And when that moved, they moved. And when that pillar stayed, they stayed. They couldn't decide when to move. God decided when to move. But once you've got an idol, you can say, come on, pick up the idol. We're going to take it off next Monday and we'll follow it along. You can control the idol. The idol can't tell you what to do. You move the idol. And so man has been guilty of idolatry ever since the beginning, as far as we can make out. Because an idol is visible and an idol is movable. You do the controlling. And so the children of Israel sought an idol. Not only did Aaron give them a form of God to look at, he gave them a festival of God. And people love parties. If you want to have a popular religion, have plenty of idols and plenty of festivals, and you're in. You will get a wonderful following straight away. People love both. They love to worship God through the senses, and they love sensations. And so forms and festivals are the two things that will make a religion popular. And Aaron said, now we've got a calf. Tomorrow we're going to have a celebration, a party. We'll start in the morning with the religious side, and after that, whoopee, we're going to have a great time. And of course, this was very popular. And they had a great time. But one of the inevitable progressions downward for the human heart is this. If you worship with the senses, sooner or later you become too interested in the sensational. And the sensational will give way to the sensual. You notice that all three words begin with the same sound. They are related words, and they are related things. Senses, sensational, sensual. And that's precisely what happened under Aaron. They worshiped God with the senses, through their eyes. They wanted to see God. It became a sensational thing, a golden calf made out of their earrings, a dazzling piece of sculpture, something that was quite out of the ordinary. And then it became sensual, and they had their wild party. I've got some newspaper cuttings here, which somebody gave me, from the People. Singers in storm over opera orgy. It concerns producer Peter Hall, the brilliant and controversial director of the Royal Shakespeare Company, over a new opera by the German composer Schoenberg, which was to be at the Royal Opera House, Covent Garden. And it concerned the presentation of the celebration of the golden calf. And it produced a storm of a controversy, I'm not going to read any of it, about his presentation of what happened that day. And it was considered unfit for the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden. You can imagine what it was like in those days. The senses, the sensational, the sensual. And it had come down that way. And all this time Moses was up the mountain planning the future, even planning the robes for Aaron as the future high priest, and Aaron was down below doing this. Here is a picture which I want to draw out. It may well be that God up in heaven has a plan for our life, and while he's planning it all out, and while he knows what he wants to do for us, we're doing something down here that's just not his will. What a contrast. Aaron had no idea at this stage what he was going to wear before the Lord. What he was doing was taking his clothes off at the foot of the mountain. And they had no idea that they were going to have a beautiful tabernacle for God to live in, with lovely furniture and meaningful curtains. They had no idea, and they were building a golden calf. And it is in this way that men and women miss God's plan for them. They do what they think is best. They do what they enjoy, what they find helpful, and God in heaven is planning something quite different. How important it is for us in 1972 to go into God's plan, not to do what we enjoy, not to do what we think helps religion, but to follow God's beautiful plan and to be in his will. Well, now we look at chapter 33. All that's by way of introduction, I'm afraid. Basically, God said they were a stiff-necked, obstinate people. It took them just 6 weeks to break the 10 Commandments. Just 6 weeks since they'd said everything he says we will do. And 6 weeks later, they have broken both tables. There were 5 commandments on one table, 5 on another. And in each table, they broke the second one. Breaking the second one in relationship to God made them break the second one in relationship to men. It follows as the night the day. Well, now, let's look at chapter 33. God is very angry. So angry, he says to Moses, your people whom you brought out of Egypt, look at them. Your people, you brought them out. Fancy God saying that. Because they are now back at the human level. They are no longer God's people whom God brought out. They are now Moses' people whom Moses brought out. We're back down to the human level. And God says, I'm just going to finish with them. Moses, you're the only one I can trust. I'm going to start a new people of God with you. And it might have happened. And the word Israel might have dropped right out of existence at this point. There might never have been an Israel. There might have been a Moses people. And Moses, bless him, prayed. And his prayer is one of the most wonderful prayers you'll read in the Bible. He says, Lord, they're your people, and you brought them out of Egypt. Not mine, yours. And Lord, I'm appealing to 3 things. Your goodness in the past. You promised Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. I'm appealing to your grace in the present. Forgive them. And I'm appealing to your glory in the future. What will people say if you let us down now? Now, those are 3 tremendous appeals, and every time you pray, you can appeal to those 3 things. And God will hear your prayer. God, I appeal to your promises in the past. I appeal to your pardon in the present. And I appeal to your glory in the future. As we go into 1972, let's say to God, God, you promised certain things in the past. We claim them. You will forgive certain things in the present. We claim that too. And what will people say if you let us down in 1972? It's your glory that's at stake. What a prayer. That's the way to pray. That's storming the gates of heaven. It's being bold, very, very bold, but in a holy boldness. Lord, you can't do that. I'm not going to let you. They're your people, and it's your glory that's at stake. And God changed his mind. The power of prayer. Think of the power of prayer to change God's mind. Did you ever realize you had that power when you got on your knees? Because God will. He loves a person to pray like this. He loves a man to claim his promises. He loves a man to challenge him to keep his glory. And so he changed his mind and he said, all right, I won't. But Moses, go down and deal with them. And Moses came down the mountain. Now the interesting thing is that he hadn't seen all this till then. God was angry because God had seen it, and Moses pleaded with God. When Moses saw it, he got more angry than God did. Did you notice that? Moses, who pleaded for them so tenderly, came down, and when he saw it, he smashed the tablets of stone. They were about 18 inches by 12 inches, two of them. Just lumps of granite, 18 by 12. And he threw them down. What a symbolic action. They'd broken them anyway, so he broke them too. And he said, you've broken them. And then he destroyed the calf. How to get rid of it? Gold is not an easy thing to get rid of. If he buried it, somebody's tempted to go and dig it up again. How could he get rid of it in a way that they'd never touch it? He chose an extraordinary way. Chose a way that would leave that gold behind in their sewage when they left the camp. What a symbolic thing to do. He made them drink it so that they wouldn't be tempted to go back for it. And that got rid of the golden calf. What did he do thirdly? He got hold of Aaron and he said, what in the world got into you? Aaron shows up as a rather weak man. Aaron says, well, you know how these people are. He was a man who was thinking not first of what God wanted, but of what people wanted. He was playing to the gallery. He was a man who was concerned about what the people of God wanted, not about what God wanted for his people. And so he gave in. He said, you know what they are? They wanted a bit of a do. They wanted something to look at. They wanted a celebration, so I gave it to them. What about this calf, said Moses. Well, you know how it is. If you put a bit of gold in a furnace, you never know what's going to come out, do you? Isn't it feeble that a grown man can stand there and say, well, it was just circumstances, you see. I was just caught up in circumstances. You never know what's going to come out of the furnace. We've talked like that. We've said, well, I got into bad company and, you know, life's been pretty pressurized and you know what happens. Well, you know what these people are like anyway. Aaron, you shouldn't talk like that. You did it. He rebuked Aaron. And then he stopped the orgy, and he did it in an incredible way. He went and stood at one end of the camp and he said, come on, you must decide whose side you're on. If you're on the Lord's side, then come over here and do what the Lord tells you. One by one, a group of people left the wild scene and came over to Moses. All his own relatives, no one else. All the tribe of Levi came. And Moses was of the tribe of Levi, and they all came to Moses. All his own family came. And they said, we know Moses, our relative, we're on the Lord's side. And he said, now go and deal with all those who are still carrying on over there. Clearly implying that they had refused to stop when Moses came. And 3,000 people died that day. What a contrast it was when the Spirit was given on the day of Pentecost. 3,000 people lived. The law kills, the Spirit makes alive. But you go through the law to the Spirit. The law has to kill you dead before the Spirit can make you alive. The law has to take away your excuses and show your sin, and then the Spirit has to come and bring life and peace and joy and righteousness. The most remarkable thing of all is that Moses said, I'm going back up the mountain. I'm going to try and make atonement for your sin. Now, up to that point, the atonement for sin was a lamb or a bull or a goat. But Moses knew that wouldn't do. It wasn't enough. So do you know what he said? Went up the mountain and he said, Lord, take me as an atonement. Blot me out of your book. God wouldn't let Moses do that. He wouldn't let anybody do it, not till Jesus came. But Moses tried to offer himself to God. Blot me out. What love you must have for your people. Could you say honestly, don't think I could, to God, "Oh God, if you'll take all my relatives to heaven, you can leave me out"? Would you say that? Paul said it. Paul said it about his own people, the Jews, and he said, "I could wish myself accursed if it would save them." And Jesus did say it and do it, and said, "You can have me, save them." But Moses tried so hard. God said, "I will destroy them and make you, Moses, everything." And Moses said, "No, Lord, unless you're going to forgive them, blot me out. I don't want to be saved if you're not going to save them." What an amazing prayer. Just suppose that God had blotted Moses out of his book. Can you imagine the Bible without Moses? Taking the book as the Bible for a moment. No mention of Moses, no law of Moses, nothing about Moses in this book. There'd be a great hole left. God didn't blot Moses out of his book. But he said, "All right, then you can go to the promised land, but not with me. I'll send an angel, a deputy." That was the next thing that Moses had to pray about in chapter 33. And God said, "I'll get you there, but not by me. No longer will you have that sense of my presence." Do you realize that means they would never build the tabernacle? For that was for God's presence. And it would mean no high priest, no robes, just an angel. Just an angel. Well, wouldn't you be glad to have an angel to walk with you personally? I'll tell you something better than an angel, and that's to have God. And Moses said, "Oh God, thank you for promising to take us there. Thank you for the offer of an angel, but we're not moving until you come with us." Once again, holy boldness. Dare you say, as we go into 1972, "We're not going to go to Millmead unless you go with us, God. Unless your presence is there." That's why we're having an all-night of prayer on Friday night. Will you please consider coming and praying with us through the night? We're doing it to say to God, we're praying for all our departments, all our plans, all that we've got lined up for the new year. We're saying, "God, we're not going unless you go with us. Your presence is what we need." And Moses said just that. And God said, "All right." Well, now we move on. Back down the mountain. Up and down the mountain Moses goes. And I was looking at a photograph of Mount Sinai this week. He must have been pretty fit, though he was getting well on in years. He was over 80. And he climbed up and down a 4,000-foot mountain that's like this. Up and down he went. No effort was too great for this old man to get the people right with God. He wasn't a man who retired from God's work. He was up and down that mountain, and he went down again, and he told the people. And they stripped off their ornaments, and they took off their brooches and all their jewelry. Some of it had gone into the golden calf. The rest of it would be needed for the tabernacle. But it wasn't a time to adorn themselves. Their lives were not now lives that could be adorned. Do you know that for many a long year after that, the Jews never wore any jewelry? They didn't adorn themselves. The tragedy is that centuries later they began to adorn themselves, and also they began to build golden calves again. Do you know that by the time of Amos there were 2 golden calves at Bethel and Dan? They'd all come back again. It's a constant danger, this. Well, they took off their jewelry. And Moses, who hadn't built the tabernacle yet, took his own tent and put it outside the others, outside the camp, and he used to go and talk. That saved him going up the mountain in a sense. And he used to go and talk there, face to face, and God said, "Moses, you're my friend." I can't think of anything that I would rather be called by God than that. Can you? Abraham was called the friend of God. Moses was told, "You are my friend." Jesus said, "You are my friends if you do what I've commanded you." My friends. I've not called you servant. I call you friend. And Moses talked with God as a friend. As we go into 1972, we want to go into it as friends. Not just as friends of each other, but friends of God. And so Moses, having got so friendly with God, said to him, God, I'd like to see your glory. Now here's an amazing thing. The children of Israel said to Aaron, we want to see God. And Aaron said, all right, I'll make you a God you can see. Moses said, I want to see you, God. But he didn't try and make something to see. He said, God, it's up to you whether you let me see you. And God said, well, if I let you see all of me, it would be too much for you. I'll let you see just a little bit. It is of the mercy of God that you have to worship an invisible God this morning. If God were visible in this building this morning, you would be blinded. And worse, it could even mean that you would be exterminated. No man has seen God, no man could and live. We're not fit to do so. And that's why God in his mercy says, no, you don't see me, you believe in me without seeing. Like Moses, you endure as seeing him who is invisible. But you can see a little bit of my glory. Moses, get into this bit of rock, get right in. I'll cover you up till I'm right past, and then you can just see the trailing clouds of glory. Just a little bit that I leave behind. Do you know that's what you see now? That's what we see of God now. We see what he leaves behind when he's passed that way. Don't we? You see the results of the touch of his Spirit in the life that's been changed. You see he's been by, and you can see that God has been in this place. Something's happened, and you see just a bit of his glory reflected. That's what Moses saw that day. Let me see your glory. All right, when I've gone past, I'll just take my hand away. And you can catch a glimpse, and you'll know that I've been by. And Moses saw his glory. Moses wanted something else too. He said, I want you to tell me what your name means. I can't understand this name, Jehovah. Tell me what it means. And God said, right, I'll tell you. Here are 5 things that God says his name means. I am. I've transliterated them into English, or translated them into an alliterative 5 words for you to remember. Here they are, 5 P's. God says, I am pity. God says, I am patience. God says, I am purity. God says, I am pardon. And God says, I am punishment. And that's what his name means. God is all those 5 things. He pities us. Not in a patronizing way. He pities us. He's full of pity. Thank God he is. He's patient. He's slow to anger and long-suffering. He's not a quick-tempered God. When he's angry, it is after he has been mightily provoked. He's slow to anger. He's a God of purity, holiness, righteousness. He's a God of pardon. He forgives thousands their iniquities. And he's a God of punishment. If you play the fool, you will not only ruin your generation, but the effect will go on down for 3 or 4 more. He's a God who's all that. And finally Moses says, well, God, are you going to go with us or not? And God says, I will renew the covenant. I will conquer your enemies. That's my side of it. And on your side, keep my commandments. And I want you to get 2 more bits of stone, and I'll write my commandments down again. And a stone has 2 sides, and one side is my promise to conquer your enemies, and your side is to promise to keep my commandments. And the festivals you are to keep are the festivals I tell you. Unleavened bread, redeeming your firstborn, the Sabbath rest, the Feast of Pentecost, the Feast of Ingathering. It's the ones I give you that you keep. Not your own festivals, but mine. Of course, my friends, this morning we are Christians, not Jews. And we are not bound by any one of the festivals of the Jews. We are to keep the festivals in a new way. We are to keep the festival of unleavened bread by putting away malice. We are to keep the festival of redeeming the firstborn by dedicating our best to the Lord. We are to keep the festival of the Sabbath rest by ceasing from our own works and resting in his. We are to keep the feast of Pentecost or harvest festival by being filled with the Spirit. And we are to keep the feast of the ingathering by gathering in all who will come and looking forward to the feast of the ingathering of the second coming of Christ. But we are to keep the festivals in a Christian way. And the last thing I've got to say this morning is the most exciting to me. Moses came down from the mountain, and he didn't realize that people would see God in his face. They wanted to see God. They wanted to say, I can see what God is like. And so they made a golden calf. But when Moses came down from the mountain, he had a golden face. It shone like gold. And they looked at it, and they could see what God was like. His face was luminous, radiant with God's glory. He'd been talking to God. That's what people should see when we go out into Commercial Road after a service of worship. They shouldn't need an image or an idol in here. They should see as we come out of the door what God looks like. God wants people to see himself, but not in a graven image. I'm so glad that our new building in Millmead is so simple and so plain, so straightforward. There is in our place of worship no ornament, no decoration, no jewels, no graven images. It's just simple, straightforward. But I hope that people will see God in that place and see the glory. How will they do it? They'll see the glory of God when they see people who've been talking with God, who don't realize that when you've been talking to God, it shows, and they're bound to see it. Moses hung a veil on his face. He didn't want them to see that it would fade. But says the New Testament, we all of us now, not just one in the people of God, not just Moses, we all, reflecting as in a mirror with unveiled face the glory of God, are being transformed into the same glory day by day. Oh yes, people want to see God. So they make their idols and images, and they dress objects up, and they fail. But God wants to be seen in the people of God. He was seen in the face of Jesus Christ, and we beheld his glory. Glory as of the only begotten Son of the Father, full of grace and truth. For the law came by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. And there was glory. And the face of Christ is to be reflected in our faces and the people of God, that people may see his glory and know that he has passed by and see the glory that lies behind. That's how we shall see God, until one day we no longer see through a mirror darkly, but face to face. Let us pray. Oh God, we would love to see your face, but we realize the sight would be too much for us as we are. But we do praise you that we can see your face in each other's faces when we have been talking with you. We pray for faith that comes by hearing, but we thank you for the day when faith will be swallowed up in sight, and we shall see face to face. Lord, as we go into 1972, into a new year, into a new building, into new opportunities, into new temptations and responsibilities, we will not go unless you go with us. We claim your promise to be with us always, even to the end of the world. Amen.